I'm Haley Brooks, 35, and literally this morning, my peaceful life exploded when a stranger claimed my apartment was actually his, triggering a crisis that revealed my husband's devastating betrayal. The quiet stability I'd meticulously built over 5 careful years, gone. Just like that. The day began like any other, sunlight spilling softly across the bed, the comforting hum of the coffee maker drifting through our cozy Boston apartment. As I stretched beneath the warmth of the sheets, my fingertips grazed the pillow beside me. I expected Michael's familiar warmth, but it was cold. Strange. He usually left for the gym later on Saturdays. Yawning, I rolled over and froze. Right there, sound asleep beside me, was a man I'd never seen before. My heart lurched, hammering against my ribs. I scrambled backward, sheets tangling around my legs, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The man stirred, eyes slowly blinking open to meet mine, confusion mirrored perfectly between us. What are you doing here?" My voice trembled, barely a whisper. I gripped the sheets tighter, heart racing with raw fear. He sat up quickly, rubbing his face, disoriented but clearly alarmed. "Wait, what? Who are you?" He glanced around frantically, panic rising in his eyes. "Why are you in my apartment?" "My apartment? Did he just—" No, I stammered, chest tightening. "This is my apartment. I've lived here for 3 years. You broke in." He swung his legs off the bed, hands raised defensively, taking a careful step back as if I might attack him. "No, hold on. I moved in yesterday. I signed the papers a month ago. Look, I have a lease." He reached for the nightstand, fumbling for a phone, swiping frantically. My own phone buzzed urgently from across the room. Dread pooled like ice water inside my chest as I grabbed it and found Michael's number displayed across the screen. "Michael? Thank God," I choked out, clutching the phone like a lifeline. "Something terrible happened. There's a strange man here saying—" The line clicked silent. "Michael? Nothing." He'd hung up on me. I stared at the phone in disbelief, shock numbing my limbs. Across the room, the stranger, Andrew Foster, as I would soon learn, held his own phone out to me, hands shaking slightly. The screen clearly showed a legal document, his signature unmistakably clear. This was his apartment. My knees buckled, and I sank onto the edge of the bed, the weight of confusion and panic pressing me down. Andrew watched, concern replacing his fear. "Listen," he began softly, cautiously approaching. "I don't know what's going on, but clearly there's been a huge misunderstanding." Misunderstanding didn't even begin to describe it. My life was unraveling in real time, threads I never knew existed coming undone at the seams. I pressed a trembling hand to my forehead, blinking back tears. How could my apartment, our apartment, belong to this stranger? And why had Michael hung up on me without a word? This wasn't just confusion. It was betrayal. It was a dark, yawning pit suddenly opening beneath everything I'd trusted and loved. I took a shaky breath, lifting my gaze to Andrew's worried face. Can you show me that lease again?" Everything had changed in a heartbeat, and deep inside, I already knew. I was about to discover how deeply Michael had betrayed me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost... You wouldn't believe what I'll do once I learn the whole truth. My hands shook as I stared down at Andrew's phone, eyes blurring at the words on his lease agreement. Every neatly typed letter felt like a blade slicing deeper into the fabric of my reality. But the real pain, the one that made my throat tight and my heart ache, was realizing just how invisible I'd been all this time, how blind I'd allowed myself to become. Andrew gently took back his phone, his gaze softening with a kind of pity that made my cheeks flush with shame. I turned away, staring numbly out the bedroom window at the bustling Boston streets below. Life outside carried on as normal, oblivious to the disaster unfolding in this apartment. In my life. "Maybe we should sit down?" Andrew offered quietly, gesturing to the living room as though afraid I might shatter at any moment. And maybe I would. I nodded stiffly and followed him out, each step heavy with dread. As I sank onto the plush gray sofa, furniture I'd spent weeks carefully selecting with Michael, memories surged forward, each one clearer and more painful than the last. 5 years with Michael, and it had all felt so real. I remembered how my heart had fluttered when he first smiled at me across the nurse's station, how charmingly confident he'd been. He'd made me feel special, seen after years of being quietly overlooked by everyone around me, including my own family. My mother and sisters had always praised my siblings' glossy achievements. A brother-in-law, a sister with her flawless corporate career. Yet my quiet dedication in the ICU had always seemed somehow lesser invisible. At dinners, my family barely glanced up when I spoke about my day. Days spent saving lives, comforting frightened patients and their grieving families. It was never flashy enough, never impressive enough. But Michael, he'd changed all that. He'd celebrated my smallest victories, showered me with praise, and made me feel like the center of his world. For the first time, someone had truly seen me, or so I'd believed. Yet now, sitting beside Andrew in the apartment that suddenly felt cold and foreign, those same memories twisted into painful questions. Why had Michael been so supportive? Had he ever genuinely loved me, or was it all manipulation, careful acting designed to keep me distracted while he siphoned away everything I owned? "Are you okay?" Andrew's voice broke through my spiraling thoughts, gently grounding me back in the moment. I swallowed hard, shaking my head slowly. "No, honestly, I'm not." He exhaled softly, fingers nervously drumming against his thigh. "Look, I know this is awkward. I had no idea when I rented this place that someone else was living here. Is there someone we can call? A friend? Family?" The question stung more than he realized. Family? Mine had always turned their backs on me when I needed them most. Friends? I'd lost touch with most, Michael slowly isolating me over the years without me even noticing. "I don't know," I whispered, voice brittle. "I thought I had someone, my husband, but now—" I trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Andrew's eyes softened even more, empathy clear in his quiet nod. "We'll figure this out, you're not alone." It was a small kindness, but it struck deeply. How ironic that in this crisis a complete stranger showed me more compassion than the man I'd married, the man who'd promised to stand by me forever. As tears threatened to spill, I realized bitterly. I'd been invisible all along, living a life I believed was perfect, but that was built entirely on lies. And now, the painful truth was finally making me visible, in the harshest way possible. I stood in front of the open closet, staring numbly at the empty hangers that used to hold Michael's suits, shirts, and ties. Only hours ago, this closet had been full, the familiar scent of his cologne lingering softly on each garment. Now, there was nothing left but emptiness. An emptiness far deeper than just vacant shelves and empty drawers. My pulse pounded, my stomach knotted, dread climbing higher with every passing second. I rummaged through drawers, finding only my things neatly folded. His side emptied out, like he'd never been here at all. The life we'd built together was erasing itself right before my eyes. I felt dizzy, desperate for something concrete to hold on to, some piece of evidence that could anchor me back to reality. Then my gaze caught the small wooden box tucked away at the bottom of the closet, the box Michael had always insisted I never touch. He'd said it held old family letters, sentimental items too painful for him to revisit. I dropped to my knees, heart racing, suddenly certain this box held more truth than he'd ever intended me to find. Hands trembling, I flipped open the lid. No letters, no photos. Instead, there were IDs. Multiple driver's licenses, passports, credit cards, each bearing Michael's face but none with his name. James Connolly, Brian Mitchell, David Wells, different names, different lives. My head spun as the reality of it slammed into me. Michael wasn't Michael. He'd never been Michael at all. A sickening chill crawled up my spine. Every moment we'd shared flooded back with sickening clarity, every whispered reassurance, every tender moment. They were all pieces of an elaborate lie, meticulously crafted, perfectly executed. I hadn't married a man, I'd married a carefully constructed identity. The realization shook me so violently I nearly dropped the box. How had I been so blind? Had there ever been cracks, moments I should have noticed? I scrambled for my phone, feverishly scrolling through messages, bank apps, emails, every account we shared. The horror deepened as each screen flashed red. Account balances emptied, credit cards maxed out, loans I never authorized. In seconds, my entire financial life unraveled in front of my eyes. He'd taken everything, every dollar we'd saved, every dollar I'd earned working nights at the ICU, saving strangers' lives while he systematically destroyed mine. A wave of nausea surged, forcing me to the floor as sobs choked me. Betrayal seared through every nerve, every breath agonizingly raw. I'd believed him, loved him, built dreams around him, and it had all been a cruel performance. I clutched my knees, rocking myself slowly on the cold bedroom floor, grief mixing with unbearable shame. How had I, someone trained to spot subtle changes in vital signs, failed to detect the ultimate deception right beside me? How could I trust anyone ever again when I'd been so thoroughly fooled? Through my tears, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, red-eyed, broken, barely recognizable. But beneath the grief, something else flickered to life, a fierce, unyielding anger. Michael had spent years building a fake life, using me, my love, and my trust as tools in his scheme. But he underestimated one thing, my strength. Wiping tears roughly from my eyes, I steadied my breathing. He'd stolen everything except one crucial piece of me, my determination to find answers, to reclaim myself from the rubble he'd left behind. Michael had kept his secrets hidden in plain sight, but now I'd expose every last one. I paced the living room floor, my phone clenched tightly in my hand, checking the screen obsessively, waiting for Michael's name to appear again. Each minute dragged painfully by, heavy with silence. Andrew had gone out, politely giving me space, but his quiet sympathy lingered in the air, reminding me just how far I'd fallen. Tonight was supposed to be special. Michael had planned a dinner at our favorite restaurant. A celebration, he'd said. He'd promised to be home early, excitement lighting his face as he kissed me goodbye just yesterday. I'd spent the week looking forward to it, envisioning soft candlelight, warm laughter, and whispered conversations about the future. But now that same dinner loomed ominously ahead, an impending confrontation rather than a romantic evening. My stomach churned with dread, my body tense, ready for a battle I wasn't sure I could handle. Would he even show up, or had he already disappeared into his next carefully constructed identity? I stopped pacing, forcing myself to breathe, counting to steady my nerves. I couldn't keep waiting. This uncertainty would devour me if I didn't act first. Taking a deep breath, I dialed Michael's number again, my hand trembling so violently it took 2 tries. It rang once, twice, then voicemail. "Michael," I spoke clearly, anger threading into my voice, masking the raw pain beneath. "I know everything. I found the box, the IDs, the drained accounts. Stop hiding. Meet me tonight at the restaurant, if you have even an ounce of respect left for what we had." I hung up sharply, heart racing as I stared at the silent phone. Part of me wanted desperately to collapse, let grief take me, surrender to the devastation. But another, stronger part forced me upright, demanding answers and closure. I stepped to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass, watching the city below. Couples walked hand in hand, friends laughed at outdoor cafes, oblivious to my shattered life behind these walls. Michael had erased our existence as effortlessly as deleting a text. How had I allowed him to have such absolute control over me? The question gnawed painfully, resurrecting familiar doubts. Maybe I had sensed the cracks all along, ignored signs because I'd wanted so badly to be loved, seen, valued. Had I turned a blind eye simply to avoid loneliness? My thoughts raced, each memory reframing itself through this harsh new lens. Michael had always chosen our friends, isolated me from coworkers, made subtle criticisms masked as concern. Each small action a careful brick placed into the invisible walls surrounding me. Now that wall had crumbled, leaving me vulnerable, raw, and completely alone. Except, strangely, I wasn't entirely alone. Andrew's gentle compassion echoed softly, offering kindness I hadn't expected from a stranger. Detective Rivera, whom Andrew had called earlier to report the bizarre apartment mix-up, had promised she'd get answers. Even through my devastation, small threads of hope tugged at me, reminding me that I wasn't completely powerless. I glanced down at my trembling hands, clenched them tightly, feeling the surge of determination that had pulled me through countless crises at the hospital, life-or-death moments requiring strength and clarity. Tonight would be no different. I squared my shoulders, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Michael had stolen my peace, my security, my trust, but he wouldn't steal my courage. Tonight I would confront him, demand answers, and reclaim the truth he'd ruthlessly hidden from me. Whatever happened, whatever pain lay ahead, I refused to remain invisible any longer. The restaurant's soft glow, once comforting and romantic, now felt harsh and intrusive. I sat stiffly at the corner table, my gaze fixed anxiously on the door, every heartbeat echoing loudly in my ears. The soft chatter around me only emphasized my isolation, each burst of laughter amplifying my dread. I glanced down at my trembling hands, quickly tucking them beneath the table to hide their betrayal. Minutes passed like hours, but finally, the door swung open. Michael walked in, dressed impeccably, wearing his familiar, confident smile. My heart twisted painfully at the sight, anger and betrayal warring within me. How dare he still look like the man I'd loved? His eyes found mine instantly, but the usual warmth was replaced something calculating, guarded. He approached casually, as if we were meeting under normal circumstances, easing gracefully into his chair, an amused smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Haley," he said evenly, meeting my gaze head-on, a glint of challenge in his eyes. "I have to say your voicemail was dramatic, even for you." "Dramatic?" My voice cracked, barely containing the storm within. "You emptied our accounts, Michael. You stole my life." He tilted his head, his expression softening slightly, feigning sympathy. "I didn't steal anything, Haley. You gave it freely. Your trust, your money. Did you ever stop to think about how willingly you handed everything over?" His words felt like a slap, cold and deliberate. My throat tightened, my stomach twisting into knots. "I trusted you because you were my husband. How could you?" "You trusted because you needed to," he interrupted calmly, sipping from a glass of water with infuriating ease. "That's your problem, Haley. You're so desperate to feel special you'd believe anything." My cheeks burned, humiliation surging through me as tears pricked my eyes. How could I have loved this cruel, heartless man? I opened my mouth to speak, but movement near the entrance caught my attention. Andrew had entered quietly, his gaze scanning the room before locking onto mine, offering silent reassurance. Michael followed my glance, his jaw tightening slightly. "Oh, you brought your new friend. How predictable." Andrew approached cautiously, his expression calm, though tension lined his posture. "She deserves the truth, Michael." Michael chuckled, but the humor never reached his eyes. "The truth? Here's the truth. Haley was an easy mark, desperate enough to believe anything, to ignore every obvious sign." Anger burned hot beneath my grief, igniting courage deep within me. "You lied, everything about you was a lie." He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And you bought every word. Whose fault is that, Haley? Really?" I flinched, feeling the room around me blur, humiliation pressing down like a physical weight. But as tears threatened to spill, Andrew spoke up again, calm yet firm. "Enough, Michael. She knows everything. It's over." Michael's eyes flashed dangerously, a crack appearing in his polished facade for the first time. "Be careful who you trust next, Haley. Not everyone will be as gentle as I've been." He rose sharply, chair scraping loudly across the floor, drawing stares from other diners. Pausing briefly, he leaned down, his voice cold in my ear. "Consider yourself lucky I left you with nothing but debt. It could have been worse." He strode away without another word, leaving me trembling, raw and utterly exposed. Andrew quickly moved to sit beside me, quietly placing a comforting hand over mine. His warmth was a stark contrast to Michael's cruelty, and the gesture shattered the last of my composure. My tears finally spilled over, quiet sobs shaking me as I realized how thoroughly Michael had broken me down, and just how deeply I now needed to rebuild myself. The weight of Michael's departure pressed heavily on my chest, the restaurant around me dissolving into a haze of muffled voices and blurred faces. My body shook uncontrollably as Andrew gently guided me outside, the evening air cool against my tear-streaked cheeks. My legs felt unsteady beneath me, barely supporting my weight. "Haley, breathe," Andrew urged softly, his voice steadying. I inhaled shakily, struggling to regain some sense of control. Just then, headlights flashed across us, and a sleek black sedan rolled slowly to a stop. My breath caught painfully as Michael stepped out once more, this time with a chilling calm. Behind him stood my mother and sisters, their faces cold, unreadable. My heart sank deeper, dread twisting through me. He'd brought my family into this. "Why?" "Mom," I whispered, voice hoarse from crying. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes, her gaze fixed on Michael as if awaiting his command. Michael approached slowly, his smile cold, controlled. "I thought you deserved a proper goodbye, Haley." My mother finally met my gaze, but her eyes held no warmth. "You've embarrassed us all enough," she said quietly. "How could you have been so careless, so foolish?" Her words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. "Mom, he lied. He's been lying to all of us." She shook her head dismissively. "You always did play the victim, Haley. We warned you about rushing into marriage, about him, but you were desperate for attention. This humiliation is your own fault." Her cruelty cut deeper than Michael's ever could. I staggered back slightly, disbelief coursing through me. I'd expected betrayal from Michael, but my own family? Michael stepped forward smoothly, placing a hand gently on my mother's shoulder, adopting the role of comforter effortlessly. "I tried my best to shield you all from Haley's instability. Unfortunately, there's only so much I could do." "You're lying!" My voice cracked, raw with pain. "Mom, please, he stole everything from me. Can't you see what he's doing?" My sisters turned away silently, avoiding my gaze entirely. The rejection in their body language was unmistakable. My own blood siding with the man who'd destroyed me. It felt like being stabbed again and again. Michael's voice softened falsely, dripping with manufactured sympathy. "It's for the best, Haley. Your family and I, we've agreed. You've brought shame on us all, and it's time we moved forward without you." My mother nodded slowly, eyes empty, voice chillingly final. "Consider yourself disowned, Haley. You're no longer part of this family." The words landed heavily, the finality echoing cruelly in my mind. My world collapsed entirely at that moment. My husband, my family, everything gone in a single ruthless stroke. Andrew stepped forward, anger tightening his jaw, protective instinct flaring visibly. "That's enough," he growled, his voice dangerously low. Michael's eyes flicked dismissively to Andrew, smirking coldly. "You can have what's left of her. She's worthless to me now." He turned sharply, guiding my mother and sisters back to the waiting car. Their silence felt deafening, their backs turned without even a glance backward. As they disappeared into the darkness, I felt an emptiness spread through my chest, hollowing me out until nothing remained. Andrew gently touched my shoulder, bringing me back from the edge. "Haley, look at me," he whispered firmly, eyes intense, sincere. "You didn't deserve that. None of this is your fault." I heard his words, felt their sincerity, but they were distant, muted beneath the roaring ache of abandonment inside me. How could I have lost everyone and everything so quickly? Yet beneath the agony, beneath the devastation, a small, fierce voice began to whisper within me. If they'd abandoned me this easily, perhaps they'd never truly deserved me at all. In the numbing aftermath, Andrew guided me carefully back toward his apartment. Each step felt like wading through heavy mud, exhaustion and betrayal slowing me down, anchoring me in grief. My mind raced frantically, struggling to piece together any sense from the chaos Michael had unleashed. Yet, underneath my shattered exterior, something stronger, something determined, quietly began to rise. We had barely reached the apartment lobby when Andrew's phone rang sharply, breaking the suffocating silence. He glanced at the screen, brow furrowing in confusion. "It's Detective Rivera," he murmured cautiously, answering quickly. "Hello? Yes, she's here with me." He listened, his expression shifting rapidly, surprise, anger, and finally cautious relief. My heart pounded furiously, anxiety gripping my throat as I tried desperately to hear what was being said. "Yes, of course. We'll meet you there," Andrew finished, hanging up abruptly. He turned toward me, eyes wide and serious. "They found something. The detective says we need to come down to the station. Now." We arrived quickly, the police station buzzing with quiet activity, harsh fluorescent lights illuminating stark white walls. Detective Rivera, a stern but kind-faced woman, approached immediately, urgency etched clearly in her expression. "Ms. Brooks," she said firmly, extending her hand with quiet authority. "I'm Detective Rivera. We have a lot to discuss." I shook her hand weakly, adrenaline mixing with exhaustion. She guided us swiftly into a small private office, closing the door firmly behind her. On the table sat a thick folder, its contents seemingly heavy enough to hold my entire shattered life. "We've been investigating your husband, Michael Brooks, or rather his real identity, Ryan Porter, for months," Rivera began directly. "He's wanted in multiple states for fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes totaling millions." My breath caught sharply, the revelation crashing over me in an overwhelming wave. "Millions?" I choked out. "You mean I'm not the only one?" She shook her head solemnly. "Unfortunately, no. You're one of several victims he's deceived in elaborate scams. He targets women with financial stability, marries quickly, drains their assets, and disappears." Anger surged through me again, this time sharper, clearer, transforming my pain into determined outrage. But why did no one stop him earlier? How could he keep getting away? Rivera sighed heavily, sympathy softening her professional mask. Because he's extremely meticulous, he leaves no immediate evidence behind. But today, thanks to you and Mr. Foster's reports, we finally have a tangible lead. Your quick actions, despite your pain, helped us tremendously. Andrew nodded encouragingly, his presence a steadying force beside me. What happens next? He asked, echoing my own unspoken question. The detective's expression hardened slightly. Her voice steady with conviction. We have enough now to issue an immediate warrant for his arrest. With your cooperation, we believe we can track him down and ensure justice, for you and every victim he's hurt. Justice. The word resonated deeply, offering me the first real glimmer of hope amid the darkness. I'd felt broken, defeated, betrayed, but now, faced with the truth, I understood something crucial. Michael, or rather Ryan, had taken everything from me. But he hadn't taken my voice. Detective Rivera leaned forward, gaze intense. I know you're hurting deeply, Ms. Brooks, but I promise you, you're not alone in this fight. My eyes filled again, not with despair this time, but gratitude and unexpected strength. I glanced toward Andrew, his quiet reassurance and unwavering support offering warmth I'd never anticipated. I'll do whatever you need, I whispered fiercely, finding my voice steady, determined. I'm ready. In that moment, amid the wreckage Michael had left behind, I felt the beginnings of something new. Resilience, determination, and the certainty that despite the pain, I had finally taken my first step toward reclaiming my life. Just hours later, the phone calls started. First from unknown numbers, then texts filled with hollow apologies. Michael Ryan must have sensed his carefully constructed world collapsing. The desperation in his messages was evident, each one a calculated attempt to manipulate me back into silence. I stared numbly at the latest message. Haley, please, we can still fix this. Meet me. Alone. My pulse quickened with a mix of anger and disbelief. Even now, after everything, he believed he could twist my emotions again. Andrew stood nearby, his face calm yet watchful, noticing my reaction. Him? I nodded slowly, feeling a familiar wave of anxiety, yet something new was mingling with it, something fierce and protective. He wants me to meet him alone. Andrew stiffened slightly. Absolutely not. You owe him nothing. I know, I whispered, and meant it. For the first time since this nightmare began, the words held real strength. The pain still lingered deep inside, but I no longer felt powerless. But maybe it's time he sees that clearly. An hour later, Detective Rivera stood in a dimly lit parking lot, briefing me quietly, while Andrew stood protectively near. Across the darkened space, Michael waited anxiously, leaning against a familiar sleek sedan, his face partially shadowed but unmistakably tense. You're safe, Rivera assured me gently. Just say what you need to say, we'll be here. My legs shook as I walked toward him, heart pounding furiously, nerves sparking with adrenaline. Michael straightened, his posture rigid, arrogance trying to mask his anxiety. Haley, he began cautiously, stepping toward me. I'm glad you came. Stop, I said firmly, holding my ground. I'm not here for your lies. His mask slipped briefly, revealing desperation beneath his careful veneer. You need to understand, I had no choice. Things got out of hand, but I never meant. Enough. My voice echoed sharply, cutting through the empty lot. He flinched, momentarily speechless. You don't get to rewrite this anymore. You lied, you stole, you broke me. His eyes darkened slightly, a flicker of irritation piercing through his act. You were so easy to fool, Haley. Admit it, you needed someone like me. No, I shot back coldly, stepping closer, rage overriding my fear. I needed someone real. You never existed. He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. So dramatic, even now. But fine, what do you want, Haley? An apology? Money? Revenge? I want nothing from you, I said, voice clear and unwavering, surprising even myself with its strength. You're empty, Ryan. Hollow. You preyed on my trust, but you failed to see my strength. I'm done. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Careful, Haley. You don't want to make an enemy of me. I met his gaze unflinchingly, courage surging, solidifying within me. You're not my enemy. You're nothing to me now. His mouth opened to reply, but the sudden glare of headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating his startled face. Detective Rivera stepped forward quickly, flanked by 2 officers, badge flashing clearly. Ryan Porter, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. Shock froze him momentarily, before rage erupted across his face. You set me up, Haley? After everything? No. I whispered calmly, holding his gaze steadily as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. You set yourself up. I just refuse to protect your lies anymore. Michael Ryan glared at me, his expression hateful but powerless, as they led him away. My heart raced, relief and sorrow mingling into a bittersweet release. Andrew moved quietly beside me, gently touching my shoulder. You did it, he said softly, his voice filled with genuine pride. No, I corrected him gently, feeling the weight of this moment deeply. We did it. I couldn't have faced him without your help. He smiled softly, a comforting warmth filling the space around us. The nightmare wasn't over, but tonight, for the first time, I felt in control of my own story again. Later that evening, Andrew brought me to his sister's quiet townhouse outside the city, offering refuge from the storm I'd just escaped. The welcoming warmth of her home contrasted sharply with the cold betrayal I'd endured, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of safety. When we arrived, Julia greeted us at the door, her expression gentle and compassionate. Without hesitation, she enveloped me in a hug that felt shockingly genuine, an embrace of comfort rather than obligation. The sincerity brought fresh tears to my eyes, though these weren't born from sadness, but relief. I made tea, she offered softly, guiding me to a cozy, worn-in sofa draped with a colorful quilt. Andrew settled into a nearby chair, silently supportive as Julia pressed a steaming cup into my trembling hands. Thank you, I murmured weakly, inhaling the calming scent of chamomile. Warmth seeped slowly into my fingertips, chasing away the chill left by Michael's betrayal. Julia sat beside me, quietly reassuring. Andrew told me what happened. I'm so sorry. I trusted him, I whispered, the confession bitter on my tongue. He took everything, and my family, they sided with him. Her eyes filled with empathy, but no pity, just an understanding that eased the sharpest edges of my pain. Family isn't always blood, Julia replied gently, glancing meaningfully toward Andrew. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stay when everything else falls apart. Andrew offered a shy smile, warmth radiating quietly from him. I studied him carefully, realizing just how much his calm presence had anchored me during the storm. He'd stepped into chaos without hesitation, offering support without expectation. Julia leaned back comfortably, watching the flicker of emotions crossing my face. You know, she began softly, when Andrew called me, I was worried, but now I understand. You're stronger than you realize, Haley. I shook my head, tears resurfacing despite my efforts. I don't feel strong, I feel broken. Broken isn't weak, Andrew said quietly, his voice thoughtful. Sometimes being broken open is the only way to rebuild yourself stronger than before. His words resonated deeply, echoing truths I'd seen every day in the ICU. Patients faced unimaginable pain, their bodies broken, but often emerged more resilient, wiser, changed in profound ways. Was that what was happening to me now? You've both been so kind, I said, voice breaking slightly. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't need to repay kindness, Julia smiled warmly, squeezing my hand gently. You just pass it forward someday. Andrew leaned forward slightly, sincerity clear in his expression. Haley, the fact you're still standing here after everything is incredible. You faced Michael, your family, all of it. Tonight, you reclaimed your power. His words filled the quiet room, resonating deeply within me. Reclaimed power. Was that truly what I'd done tonight? I remembered the strength I'd felt standing before Michael, refusing his manipulation. Andrew was right. I had faced the storm and somehow emerged standing. In that moment, nestled between Julia's comforting presence and Andrew's steady reassurance, I felt the truth of what family should be. Not defined by blood or obligation, but built through trust, empathy, and genuine support. Michael had broken my heart, my trust, and nearly my spirit, but in the wreckage he'd left behind I found something powerful, something unexpected, a chance to rebuild myself within a community of real support and kindness. As I sipped my tea, surrounded by genuine warmth, I finally began to understand the truth behind Andrew's words. Being broken open wasn't the end. It was the start of becoming someone stronger, braver, and infinitely wiser than I'd ever imagined. In the days that followed, Michael's attempts to reach me grew increasingly desperate. Calls from unfamiliar numbers, anonymous emails begging forgiveness, pleading for understanding. Each contact felt intrusive, invasive, a harsh reminder of the damage he'd done. But this time I didn't feel helpless. Instead, I felt a fierce need to protect myself. With Detective Rivera's help, I filed formal restraining orders, taking every necessary legal step to shield myself from his manipulative reach. Each signature on the paperwork felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, brick by brick, building walls not out of fear, but out of strength. Andrew was a quiet, steady presence through it all, checking in without pressure, offering companionship without expectation. One afternoon, as we sat quietly on Julia's back porch sipping coffee beneath a pale autumn sun, he gently asked, "How are you feeling?" I took a deep breath, reflecting honestly. "Stronger," I replied, voice steady, more confident than I expected. "It still hurts, but each day gets easier. The boundaries help." Andrew smiled softly, genuine warmth in his eyes. "Boundaries are powerful. It's okay to put yourself first now, Haley." His words resonated deeply. For years I'd placed others' needs above my own, Michael's desires, my family's expectations, silencing my instincts, dismissing my own worth. But now for the first time I was actively choosing myself. My newfound strength was tested again a few days later when my mother unexpectedly appeared at Julia's doorstep, looking visibly shaken, her expression heavy with regret. "Haley," she began, voice trembling, "I didn't want to understand how badly you'd been hurt." I stood silently, heart aching, torn between anger and longing for the family I'd always wanted but never truly had. "You abandoned me," I finally whispered, voice barely audible, "when I needed you most." Her eyes filled with tears, pleading desperately. "I made a mistake, Haley." Michael was convincing. I was blinded by pride and fear of embarrassment. "Please give us another chance." Pain flared sharply, memories of their rejection vivid, raw. I steadied myself, feeling Andrew's reassuring presence nearby. "I can't," I said clearly, firmly. "Not now. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness might come, but not at the cost of my self-respect." Her face fell, but she nodded slowly, accepting the boundary I'd set. "I understand," she whispered, turning quietly away. Watching her go was excruciating, yet undeniably necessary. Another vital step toward reclaiming myself. Later that evening, sitting quietly with Andrew beneath the soft glow of string lights, I felt a profound sense of clarity. "Was that too harsh?" I asked softly, uncertain. "No," Andrew reassured gently, shaking his head firmly. "It was honest. Real healing requires difficult choices." I sighed softly, appreciating his steady wisdom. He was right. This wasn't about punishment or revenge, but about finally valuing myself enough to protect my emotional well-being. "Boundaries feel strange," I admitted quietly, smiling faintly. "Unfamiliar." He laughed softly, warmth filling his eyes. "That's because they're new. But they'll become natural, and someday you'll wonder how you lived with it." The night air was cool, the quiet hum of the neighborhood around us comforting rather than isolating. Sitting beside Andrew, reflecting on all I'd endured and all I'd overcome, I felt the quiet confidence of someone who'd reclaimed their own narrative. Michael and my family had tried to define me, tried to control who I was, but their hold had shattered. In their absence I was finally free to set new boundaries, new rules, reclaiming control of my own story. "I don't know what comes next," I whispered into the stillness, not afraid of uncertainty for the first time. "But I'm ready for it." Andrew nodded warmly, lifting his cup in quiet affirmation. "Whatever it is, Haley, it's yours." Months passed, each day another careful step toward healing. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, drawing strength from the familiar rhythm of caring for others. Each patient I comforted, each life I touched, reminded me of my own capacity for compassion, a powerful antidote to the pain Michael had inflicted. But healing wasn't enough. Deep within, a quiet urgency tugged at me. A desire to turn my suffering into something meaningful, something transformative. I didn't want my story to end as a cautionary tale. I wanted it to become a beacon for others who'd faced betrayal, isolation, or financial abuse. Sitting one quiet afternoon in Julia's cozy kitchen sipping coffee, I finally voiced the idea that had been simmering inside me. "I want to help others who've gone through what I experienced," I said softly, feeling vulnerable yet resolute. "I want to create a place where people can find support, guidance, resources, where they can rebuild after betrayal." Andrew glanced up from his laptop, eyes brightening with excitement. "That's a powerful idea, Haley." Julia immediately nodded, enthusiasm lighting her expression. "People need something like this, someone who truly understands what they've been through." Encouraged by their support, I spent the next several weeks meticulously researching, outlining plans, reaching out to organizations, lawyers, counselors, anyone who could help me turn my vision into reality. Each step forward brought clarity and renewed purpose, my pain reshaping itself into determination. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the window, Detective Rivera visited unexpectedly, bearing news I'd long awaited. "Ryan Porter was sentenced today," she informed me, eyes steady but kind. "He'll be serving years behind bars, and restitution will be made to victims, including you." Hearing the finality brought tears, complicated tears of relief, closure, and quiet triumph. "Thank you," I whispered, genuinely grateful for her persistence. She shook her head gently. "Thank yourself, your courage made the difference. You reclaimed your life, Haley, and you're giving others strength to do the same." Her words echoed warmly as I continued building my initiative. I named it the Reclaim Project, symbolizing my own journey of reclaiming identity, dignity, and power from someone who had tried to erase me entirely. It wasn't merely a support group, it was advocacy, education, empowerment. It was me finally reclaiming my name, my worth, and rewriting my legacy on my terms. On the day of our official launch, standing nervously at the podium before a small but eager audience, my heart raced, excitement and pride mingling together. Andrew, Julia, Detective Rivera, and dozens of others whose kindness had guided me through the darkest moments stood by, their presence comforting and affirming. "My name is Haley Brooks," I began clearly, voice trembling slightly yet strong with conviction, "and I've experienced betrayal, isolation, and financial fraud firsthand. But today, I'm not defined by victimhood. I'm defined by resilience." The applause that followed brought fresh tears, gratitude flooding me. Afterward, Andrew approached, pride shining openly in his eyes. "You did it," he whispered warmly. "No," I smiled softly, holding his gaze. "We did." He laughed gently, acknowledging our shared journey. "Fair enough, but you were always stronger than you realized." Looking around the room filled with hope, determination, and possibility, I finally understood the truth of his words. I had been broken, but from those broken pieces I had built something far stronger, far more meaningful. Michael had stolen nearly everything from me, but he hadn't stolen my ability to turn pain into purpose. He hadn't taken my voice. Now, surrounded by genuine support, dedicated to helping others reclaim their own stories, I finally reclaimed mine, transforming betrayal into legacy, heartbreak into healing, and victimhood into strength. I was no longer invisible. I was powerful. Tonight, exactly 1 year after the morning my life imploded, I stood alone on the balcony overlooking a city illuminated by thousands of tiny glittering lights. The noise below felt distant, softened by my vantage point, a perfect metaphor for how far I'd come from the chaos Michael had inflicted upon me. The Reclaim Project had blossomed into a thriving community, a haven of healing for others who'd endured manipulation, betrayal, and loss. With each person we helped, each story shared, my own pain transformed more fully into purpose. Yet the greatest triumph wasn't in the project's success, but in the quiet peace that had finally settled within my own heart. Earlier in the evening, I'd quietly celebrated with Andrew and Julia, a simple dinner full of genuine laughter, warmth, and gratitude. After they left, I'd remained here, savoring the solitude and reflecting on the journey I'd made, the moments of crushing despair, the quiet flickers of hope, and finally the strength I discovered within myself. I smiled faintly, wrapping my arms around myself against the cool evening breeze. For the first time in my life, I felt whole, not because of someone's validation or approval, but because I'd finally learned to truly value myself. The pain hadn't entirely disappeared, occasional memories still surfaced, bringing quiet grief or lingering anger. But those feelings no longer defined me. I'd built new boundaries, forged deeper connections, and created a legacy rooted in resilience, compassion, and truth. Michael's betrayal hadn't broken me, it had reshaped me, unveiling strengths I never imagined existed. Andrew's quiet encouragement echoed softly in my thoughts. "You're stronger than you realize." How right he'd been. Yet, the ultimate strength I'd discovered wasn't in facing Michael, confronting my family, or building something meaningful. It was in the quiet realization that I was enough, exactly as I was. My phone buzzed gently, a text from Andrew appearing on the screen. "You okay?" I smiled warmly, replying simply, honestly, "More than okay, finally at peace." I slipped the phone back into my pocket, savoring the tranquility of this moment, understanding that peace wasn't external, it wasn't granted by others or dependent on circumstances. True peace was internal, rooted deeply within the acceptance of myself. My flaws, my scars, my strengths, my journey. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath, feeling gratitude for all I'd endured, not because the pain had been justified, but because the experience had led me here, to clarity, to self-worth, to genuine peace. My heart filled quietly, a gentle joy blossoming inside me. A year ago, I'd been shattered by betrayal, my life crumbling beneath someone else's cruelty. Tonight I stood stronger, wiser, and infinitely more authentic than I'd ever been before. My worth wasn't measured by anyone else's approval, acceptance, or love. My worth was internal, intrinsic, unshakable. Opening my eyes, I gazed once more across the city, its lights shimmering brilliantly beneath the darkened sky. A smile touched my lips, the peaceful certainty in my heart deepening further. I'd found myself, not despite the betrayal, but through surviving it. My story wasn't about revenge or bitterness, it was about reclamation, about healing, about resilience, and most of all, it was about finally realizing I was enough, exactly as I was. Have you ever felt defined by someone else's betrayal or judgment, feeling like your worth depended on their approval? If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear yours. Drop a comment and share your experience. Your voice matters more than you know. And if this journey touched your heart, please hit like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who needs a reminder that it's okay to define success, happiness, and peace on their own terms. Remember, betrayal doesn't have to break you. Your worth isn't defined by how others see you, it's defined by how you see yourself. Reclaim your story, reclaim your strength, and never be afraid to write your own ending. Ask yourself, what boundaries have you set to honor your worth? Reflect on who truly sees you, not just for your accomplishments or status, but for your heart, resilience, and authenticity. Share this story because your courage might inspire someone else to reclaim their voice too. You're stronger than you realize, and you're never, ever alone.